Aloha and welcome. Thank you for being here with me at this time. I really honor and appreciate you trusting the nudge to take some time for yourself and join me in this exploration and in this discussion. So, I've created a presentation for you so you don't have to stare at me the whole time throughout this process. And just know that this is a little over an hour. So, if you can plan to have this time for yourself, and feel free at any given moment to press pause and sit with some of the information that comes through. Oftentimes, when this channel is open, there is a lot of information that is channeled and streamed through, and there are deeper layers and levels to the information, really the wisdom that is streamed through. So I invite you to take your time with this presentation, press pause when you need to, and sit with the little things that come through. Okay, and my rooster friend will be in the background joining us along the way. All right, so let's get to it. All right, so one more time, just I want to welcome you into this space. I appreciate you trusting the nudge to be here and to uh, just follow your intuitive wisdom that has led you on this journey to this day in this now. This presentation is about how your divine feminine holds the key to your deepest desires. And when I mention the word desires, it's actually incorporating a lot of layers to that. So we think we know our desires, but a part of this presentation is about what is our true, deeper desire. And that is something that the divine feminine only shows us through time and through layers and levels. So I ask you to allow yourselves to step away throughout our time together, step away from who you think you are, step away from all the things that you have been told, that you have been raised as. Like, just allow yourself to step away from the world for just this hour as we spend our time together, and let yourself swim in the waters of your subconscious and explore the unexplorable. Explore your deepest imagination, explore the deepest possibilities. And I know this is going, deeper into what the divine feminine holds as a passage to your deepest desires, but I want you to get curious, and the curiosity will only lead you to new beginnings. So, just to share a little bit about me, um, I had a strong spiritual awakening in 2012, which I wrote a book about. And that spiritual awakening was actually sort of caused, and I do this because it was like um, reaching with my hands, because it's like there was an explosion that happened when my husband and I, when we met, our union is what caused our spiritual awakening. And from that process, there was a path that unfolded through time that eventually led me into this path of the divine feminine. Outside of that, a big lesson that I've had to learn through this process is understanding how to ground and anchor into my body. So, a big part of this discussion today together is how are we not only understanding our desires and allowing the divine feminine to help us through that, but how are we actually anchoring into them? And that to me is big. So, because it's been a big part of my journey and a big lesson that I've had to learn, it's my passion to share this with you. A reminder that this presentation is about an hour. So just take a moment, get really present, turn off the notifications on your phone for just 1 hour. Allow yourself to be in this space, in this container with me and with yourself, most importantly. Grab your favorite journal and your pen and make yourself a cup of tea, or maybe grab a latte. My favorite is a decaf oat latte. It's just a winner every time. So go ahead and pick up, create the space that is right for you to get cozy and comfortable. And yeah, let's begin. So, my intention during our time together and with this presentation is to give you some insight on what the divine feminine energy is. I'm really excited. And how this exploration is going to truly give you clarity as to what your deepest desires are. Also, for you to be able to walk away with a deeper knowing of yourself, even if that just means a deeper curiosity and some feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment, or what women often say is, wow, I've had these nudges and they were confirmed. So that is my intention for you today, to confirm some of these nudges that perhaps have been in your subconscious for quite some time, perhaps for yourself and for your generations and for who knows how long. And just to be very clear and upfront, this is a presentation in regards to the Woman Wisdom Mentorship. So, although I do want you to walk away with many nuggets, there is an invitation to join me in the Women Wisdom Mentorship, and that will be explained further on at the very end of the presentation. Okay, so let's get straight to it. What does your womb mean to you? I want you to take some time with this and maybe even press pause and journal about, what does the womb mean to you? And I like to ask this because the womb can be this portal of expansion and it could take us in so many different directions. And yet it could also be completely unavailable and really mean nothing to us at this time. And both of those are completely okay and actually perfect for where we are. So just getting curious about what the womb means to you in this moment in time. I know for me, if you would have asked me this in the beginning of my journey, before even any initiations with the divine feminine, I would have just kind of felt uncomfortable because I had no meaning for the word womb. I actually had no relationship to it. I didn't know what the divine feminine was. Just the whole concept of the things that I had seen around the womb and the divine feminine were really just turning me off. So I had no relationship to it, neither did I have any intention or nudge to get involved with what was being presented as womb work or the divine feminine. Now, I ask this also to bring forth the fact that there has been a massive disconnection and forgetfulness about what the womb means to us as a humanity, to us as a world, to us as a species. And she is rising at this time, the divine feminine, the awakening of the womb, and what that means for each and every one of us. This is not gender-based work. The womb is a energetic portal that exists within every single human being on this planet, and yet a embodied feminine woman who has a uterus and has a menstrual cycle has a very specific role and work to be doing. And this is also related, believe it or not, to your deepest desires. So there's this concept that is being revealed with this presentation to you, that there are many levels and layers to your deepest desires, and your divine feminine will show you her way to it. And it will be very unique to you. And just understand that it's very important that you get curious and you connect with, and you also birth your desires into this world. And reconnecting to your womb is an incredibly powerful, magical, and practical way to do that. So let's just take a moment to focus in on and take note that our lower chakras are needed are absolutely needed in order to ground and anchor into our power. The lower chakras are not often talked about. And I know we're talking about the womb right now. So you're like, Celeste, what are you talking about? That makes no sense, right? Actually, it does, because oftentimes when we talk about the divine feminine and we talk about the spiritual consciousness, we don't like to talk about the lower frequencies, quote unquote, or the lower chakra energy centers. And this conversation involves us not only talking about it, but really honoring it and bringing it to the forefront. So understanding that the lower three chakras are all, in essence, resembling the womb. So they sort of collapse into the space of the womb. When I refer to the womb, I refer to the lower three chakras, which are the solar plexus, the sacral, and the root chakra. If you're not familiar with these, don't even worry about it. It's really not important. Just understand that we have to, at this time, because there's so much light and love and light energy that is coming into this world, it can be very ungrounding. It can be very alluring, and it can be very, like we like to say, the puppet show can really take our attention because it's so light and bright and beautiful and airy and fairy. And yet at the same time, there are those of us who are being called to get very curious about what is power, what is desire, where does that lie in my body, and how do I tap into that? So this conversation is going to tap into these themes, and I want to just make a note that the lower chakras are absolutely needed in order to create a sacred and strong container to hold our deepest desires. And the divine feminine is sort of like the train, like the trolley that will take us there. So, what happens when we forget the role of the womb as a society? This is really important because this is exactly where we are at this time as a society. We have forgotten what the womb means. Just like me in the beginning of this path, I didn't have a definition of the womb. I didn't have a connection. I was actually turned off by most of the things that I would see on the womb and the divine feminine. I knew that that wasn't for me. And somehow the path unfolded for me to go so deeply, intimately into this work. And the reason for that, one of which, is because the role of the womb has not only been forgotten, it's also been, as it's rising, it's also been used and distorted and manipulated. So, putting that all aside, I want us to sort of put aside anything that we feel about the work of the divine feminine, the work of the womb, all of these things that we have seen in the past. And I want to get just very practical with this essence. So, what could it look like in our lives, in our bodies, in our experience as a human, when we forget the role of the womb? Well, one of it, and this is just from my personal experience I'll be sharing with you, is knowing that you have so much to give in this world, knowing that you have so much to offer. There's something inside of you that's so vast and like waiting to be birthed and created and shared with others. But when it comes down to it, you're simply not showing up for it. Now, you don't have to get logical, you don't have to get mental, you don't have to figure out, well, it's because this or that, or none of that matters. This is not a place where I need you to start going into explanations. It's actually the opposite, because we're not going to start to list out the things. We're not going into that masculine logical place. We're going into the deeper mystical reasons, and we're going to ground these things right now in this discussion and our time together. So when you feel like you have so much to give, or you have something that's within you that's been waiting to be created or shared with the world or with your community, or maybe just with those closest to you, or just with yourself, you've been waiting to create something and yet you can't, or you don't. You know that you're on the leading edge of something. You feel like there's something that's about to be created, but then you're staying in that about to be created mode, like I did for many years. I stayed in that mode for many years until I was initiated and worked with the divine feminine. So again, I'm just sharing with you some of the practical things that may come up when we are in a place in our lives where we have forgotten or have been completely disconnected to our womb space. Another way that it shows up is that you may feel completely unsatisfied or not sustained by the life that you have. Even if you have everything that you need and have wanted on the surface, right? This is very, very, so much more common than what you may think. So, a lot of women and just human beings live the life of their dreams or have everything supposedly on paper and in their life, and yet they feel unsatisfied or they feel not sustained at a very deep soul level. And there is something very, very based at the root essence of our being. And this is the divine feminine. This is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Also, you may have settled. This is another thing that comes up with the divine feminine and the lack or the inability to tap into our deeper desires is that at some point in your life, you decided to settle. And that could mean you decided to settle with your job, with your work, with your relationships, whatever it is. At some point, you decided it was okay to settle. And this could have been in your subconscious at the age of 2 or 3 when you saw your parents, or you learned something along the way that said, you must settle in order to survive. So, again, we're not being logical or judgmental. It doesn't matter why. And this is not pushing you in the direction of, you got to make drastic changes, right? This is not that kind of place. This is just getting curious about, have I settled in my life? Can I be honest with myself at a deepest place where I know that nobody, not even I, will judge myself, and ask myself, have I settled? Have I perhaps told myself that what I dream of is just a dream and not possible? And again, I'm not trying to motivate you. This is not a motivational speech. This is tapping into something way deeper. So you get to take it there if you want. And then just another example that it can show up in the way that you have been disconnected from your womb is that you know that there's this potential inside of you. You know that there's something nudging you. You know that there is something missing. You simply can't put a finger to it. That is the literal definition of the divine feminine. She is so vast. You cannot touch her. She is in everything and yet cannot be seen. So there is something inside that has told you there's something else, and yet you have been unable to put your finger to it. This is the coming back to your womb. This is the coming back to your divine feminine. This is the beginning of your deepest desires. So I just want to know if this resonates with you. Take a moment and sit with it, kind of take it in. I know I start talking pretty quickly. My words start to jumble and I get really excited. So just taking a minute to check in and ask yourself, does any of this resonate? How about the following? Because all of these are just small ways of how our disconnection is showing up in our inability to ground and anchor into our lower chakras in order to activate our full potential. How about you're wanting to anchor into your gifts? You know you have gifts, you know exactly what they are. And yet somehow you haven't been able to show up to them fully. You haven't been able to anchor into them. And that was a big thing for me. My gifts were shown in the beginning of my spiritual awakening. And it took me many, many years to be able to actually put a finger on them and anchor them. It wasn't until the opening of this work of the divine feminine. You want to and feel it in your essence that you're ready to be with the right partner. Or perhaps you're with somebody now and you're ready to take it to the next level. And I don't mean like marriage. I'm talking about the next conscious evolutionary step for a sacred union. So you know you're being called to be held at a deeper level, to be sustained as you tap into this deeper level of a power that's within you. And you're also ready to receive consistent support. And that's another thing, that the divine feminine is a constant flow. She is the rivers and the waters of this world. So the constant flow of life sustaining you is you coming back to your desires, is you coming back to the divine feminine. And that coming back is what will help ground you and anchor in to the power that's necessary in order to fulfill these desires. So today, we're going to learn about anchoring into your womb, and how this is the key to tapping into and living your desires. So not only do we have to get curious about what are our desires, but the process of actually living them and anchoring them down into our bodies and into our lives. That's what we're going to be talking about. And so that involves 3 points for today. This is not to say that it's ABC. It's not like your desires will be lived through, right? Again, none of this is logical, but the way that it works is that you will receive the information that you're ready to receive. And a part of this process are the following 3 themes. 1, uncovering your unknown potential through the wisdom of each cycle. So first, there needs to be an uncovering that happens in this process. Then the living of your desires in the sense of anchoring into your creative power center, AKA, you probably know it, your womb. The womb is the chalice of your desires and your creations. So it's important that we have a strong physical vessel that we are able to anchor into in order to live our desires. So I know some of these themes it's written in a short few words, but it's actually a lot deeper. So I ask for you to study the body, study the mind, and allow yourself to receive. And then the third aspect is understanding menstruation as a divine gift. Realizing that when we start to see the divine in the human and the human in the divine, which for me was a big lesson. And again, we'll go in a little bit deeper, but realizing that this process is not all love and light and airy fairy. And the process of the divine feminine asks us to descend in order to ascend. I have a podcast called Grounding Ascension, and that's exactly what it is. It is the manifestation of the divine feminine, birthed through the process of descending into our womb, descending into our darkness in order to ascend into the light. And that process is not done once, it is done over and over and over again, like the Fibonacci, like the spiral of the womb. It does not happen just once. It happens continuously. And so we're going to talk a little bit, just a little bit. We're going to touch on these topics, like just a hairline. Okay. So be patient. And I'm just excited. I'm glad you're here. Okay. Teaching number 1, uncovering unknown potential, womb wisdom revealed through each cycle. So let's talk about the womb. Let's talk about the way that she speaks to us. Let's talk about the language in which she speaks to us and how we first have to anchor in and learn her language in order to blossom and receive our desires. So the language of the womb is very much like hieroglyphics to our essence, right? To the person we are now. We have to decipher it in layers. So symbology works in the sense that a symbol doesn't just mean one thing. It means many, many things to many, many people on different layers throughout time. And this is exactly how the womb works. This is why we have this option, if we are bleeding, to be revealed the deeper wisdom of our body one layer at a time, one cycle at a time. So it's very hard to tap into our deep, deep desires and live them through our experience if we are not tapping into our womb, if we are not tapping into and getting curious about the language of our womb. So that's first and foremost. It's kind of like laying the foundation, setting the soil down, and properly nourishing the soil requires us to get to know the language of our own womb. And so there's a process to that requires us to show up to our bodies, up to self-care, up to our intuitive gut. This is what brought you here, right? This is your womb talking to you, bringing you here, asking you to show up to something else. And this is one of the reasons why I've created the Cyclical Living Planner, if you haven't heard about it, because I found this process to unfold through me through time. And as soon as I realized my cycles are speaking to me, my womb is speaking to me through her different seasons. And it's not just while I'm bleeding. This is every day that I have to learn and tune in and find some kind of stillness within to tap into this knowledge. What is going on? And so when I began to get curious, I realized our cycles are speaking to us. And they're not just speaking to us, they're telling us where to go and what to do. And we don't logically know where they're taking us. And so the Cyclical Living Planner was not my intention to create, it was birthed through me, just like the rest of the desires that we all have will at some point happen. It will be birthed through you without you even holding the intention. And that's why in this presentation, I want you to get curious, but also open yourself to believe that you don't even know what your true desires are, because the creations that are within you are yet to be discovered. You don't even know what they are. You don't even know the potential of them. And so getting in tune with your cycle is step number one. Connecting to your body. And there are so many free resources I've created for you to do that. So it's just time for you to start connecting to the way that the language of the feminine speaks to you and through you. And the easiest way to do that is to connect to your cycle. And so as we learn the language of our womb, we begin to root in order to rise. And this is what I talk about when we say descend in order to ascend. We first have to anchor in order to rise and birth something. So if we are curious about living our deepest desires and connecting to the divine feminine, we first have to say hi to her. We first have to put our hands on our womb and say, let's speak the same language, right? I can't fathom living my desires if I have no connection to my deepest desires. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, where we think we're living our desires. And the reason why many people are unsatisfied is because we've become a manifestation obsessed culture. And so I invite you to anchor into your womb and start to get curious about, how does your womb speak to you and what does she have to tell you? And the way that she works is that she will not give you everything all at once. That's impossible. She will reveal herself to you in layers, one petal at a time. As you are ready, so is she. The more you open, the more she will open to you. So can you allow yourself to do that? Your menstrual cycle, cyclical living, is your key to that. I want to share with you in each one of these teachings a very special person that has come into my life, a client who has pretty much shown me these teachings. And Jessie, she is a wife and mother of 4. She came and arrived with the essence of, I have everything in my life. I'm living my dream life. And yet there is something inside of me that feels unsatisfied. And I don't know why, I don't know what it is. And I feel like it's a sin because I have my dream life and yet I am not satisfied. Who am I to say I cannot be satisfied with everything I have been given? And this was the call of the divine feminine, yet she had no words for womb or divine feminine like me. You know, we're not taught that. We're just taught this is the life that will give you satisfaction. And then when you have it, most people, a lot of people don't receive the satisfaction from it. And so going through the mentorship and working with the divine feminine and getting deeper into this knowledge, at the end of everything, she said, wow, it truly is all possible. Here I was kind of swallowing myself, kind of sinking in and drowning in the ocean of being a mother of four and a wife and a daughter and a sister and a creator. And my world just multiplied before me, and I realized it truly is all possible. That thing that I couldn't touch actually became real, and it was inside me the whole time. It was never going to be outside of me. And this is what we bring forth when we talk about tapping into our deepest desires through the divine feminine. So number 2 is living our desires. So when we get curious enough to learn the language of our womb and we start to speak to her, she starts to speak to us, and we get comfortable with that. We start to reconnect to our bodies, which is something that we have forgotten and lost in our life, in our tradition, in our humanity. The next part is, well, living our desires. And so, first and foremost, it's really important to just make note that this doesn't happen in 1 month, it doesn't happen in 1 week, it doesn't happen even maybe in 1 year. Our desires are constantly evolving and changing and transitioning, just like we as human beings. And so it's very important for us to have a lot of patience with ourselves and then understand that we need to anchor into our womb. And anchoring into our womb, anchoring into those lower 3 chakras is what's going to help us get to know and manifest our desires. So again, we think we know our desires, but as we allow the divine feminine to speak through us and reveal herself and reveal deeper layers of our truth, we start to anchor into something new that is a part of us that we have either forgotten or shamed or been told that we're not allowed. And that could take years to unfold, but I do want you to know that living your desires is possible, but it requires us to anchor into our womb, which is something that you might not hear often in spiritual communities. And it's something that I was never told. So in my spiritual awakening, while I was swimming in the oceans of the ethers, I thought I was spiritually awakening. Meanwhile, I was completely unanchored, and I did not feel satisfied with the life that I lived. So what is this anchoring into our womb, living our desires? It's about birthing into the world the divinity we came here to emit. We are birthers. We are creators and creatrixes. And unless we are birthing creations that are stemmed and anchored in to our true essence, we are never going to feel satisfied. We can create and manifest everything that we are told is supposed to give us satisfaction. But if we are not anchoring in and allowing ourselves to unfold and reveal the different layers of our true and deep desires that lie within our subconscious, that lie within our body and our bones, how could we possibly birth and live anything that will come close to satisfying our deepest, truest desires? This is why we have millionaires that are completely depressed. This is why we have so much mental illness in our world, for so many other reasons, but one of which is because we have forgotten how to connect to our bodies and we don't know how to anchor into our wombs. So it's really important that we start to anchor into our bodies in order to birth our deepest desires. And this is not about manifestation. So I want to be very clear about that and create a very clear distinction that we have become, like I had said earlier, a manifestation obsessed world, especially in the Western culture, that if you can dream it, you can become it. This kind of attitude of you can manifest anything. And so people went ahead, they made their vision boards, and they allowed themselves to program the mind in order to project a reality that was told to them this is what satisfaction looks like. And when they come to the end of the road, like most women do when they approach this work, they come dry. They arrive unsatisfied. They arrive with no answers because they have manifested everything they wanted or have been surrounded by this manifestation culture and haven't been able to manifest the things, whatever it is. This is a distorted masculine approach. This is not to blame, shame, or judge that process because chances are we've all been through it or tried it or whatever the case. But understanding and making a very clear distinction that birthing into the world the divinity we came here to emit, which was chosen before we came in, is very different than creating a vision board and programming our mind to manifest a certain reality. It's very, 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 very different. Birthing into the world, the divinity we came here to emit is anchored into something so deep, so wise within your body that you likely, like me, don't have words for it, but can feel it. This is what I'm sharing with you today. Your deepest desires are rooted within you, within your connection to your body, to your womb, to your lower centers of creation, of expression. And we as women are here to birth. How and what we birth depends on us, depends on you. Yes, you can use manifestation tricks to manipulate the realms around you, but if you are ready to dive deeper into the deepest desires of your life and your essence and your soul aspects, the divine feminine will anchor you in first into the wisdom that you do not know lies within you. And I can only say that because this is the process I've been shown and lived. I do not share anything that I have not lived. And I'm not saying it's an easy process. I'm saying if you are here, you're called to go there and birth what you do not know you are capable of birthing because you are that divine. And the more you trust, the more you will birth. The more you surrender to the divine feminine, the more she will take you towards because she is the void. She is the womb space. She is the dark cosmos. She is the infinite of the infinite. And she will sustain you in the deepest sense through those creations. Just got to take a few moments there, you know? Got to slow down. And so we have Lily, a woman, a mother who, although she had many gifts and was very, very talented, very powerful healer, was unable to anchor in and share her gifts with the world around her. And as we did deeper work within the womb, we realized there was a lot of leakage energetically from the womb space. And again, like I mentioned earlier, the womb space is referred to as the 3 lower energy centers. And I'm not going to go deeply into it. If you're not connected to the lower 3 energy centers or you don't know about them, don't worry. You don't have to go research. But understand that the womb is a portal that collapses these 3 centers. And so if you feel, let's start with the root, if you don't feel secure enough in your essence, in your being, in your life, or you feel like you have to do this alone, You feel like you're not supported fully, or you feel like it has to be hard. That's one of the things that I found within myself. Like, I learned very early on in life that things have to be hard. It was a huge awakening to realize, wow, the divine feminine teaches us that that's a choice. I'm not saying this process is easy. No, 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 no. The process of anchoring and realizing our deepest desires is not easy, but creating our desires and living them, it doesn't have to be hard the whole time. Yes, we will be challenged, but the belief system of it has to be hard and living a hard life is very different. So these are just bullet points for you to check in with your womb and see, get curious, do you have any energetic leakage? And by the way, there's no judgment. Most people on this planet do. And we talk a lot about that in the mentorship, but understanding that womb leakage is like 99% of the people. Like, it's just, that's just the way that this reality is built. So just get curious, that's all. And so sacral energetic leakage is distorted sexual energy within you or within your partner. Because if you're in a relationship and you've attracted some kind of distorted sexual energy, it's a representation of what's within. So what's happening there with your sexual energy? What's your connection and relationship to your sexual energy? Is it aligned to your truest desires? This is stuff to get really, really clear about, because our sexual force is extremely powerful and a huge reflection of where we are with our desires and our creations. I have a full podcast episode on the true sexual force, which is just like a hairline, tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the essence of the sexual energy. But get curious about that, because this is completely and directly related to your desires and living your desires. And the divine feminine works obviously with the womb and extremely close to our desires. And then lastly, the solar plexus, our ability to express, to create, to intuitively move through the world and freely express ourselves the way that we know we can. So if you feel held back in any way in your form of expression, of creation, of being intuitively guided and moving through the world, then just get curious about, is there any leakage around there? Are there any things that need to be looked at? Because these are very important to get clear about. Being able to live your desires, if you have leakage around these areas, it's going to be hard to tap into them. Tap into your true, deeper desires. If there is leakage around these centers, which is very, very common, it's something that needs to be addressed. Not something that you have to fix or heal right now. It's just something that needs to be addressed and looked at so that you can tap into your deepest desires. So I hope you're getting all of this. I hope you are receiving something from it, and it's resonating and landing with you. And so lastly, I want to talk about menstruation as a gift. And if you know me, you know that I love this teaching, this understanding that menstruation and bleeding is one of our deepest, most divine gifts. And it is a huge doorway to reconnecting back into our bodies. Menstruation is both divine and human. It is the most practical, common, and yet perhaps the most taboo subject that exists. And to me, it just blows my mind. Like, how is that possible? How could something that is so practical, that every embodied feminine person, womb lady in this earth bleeds at least once a month for, I don't know, 40 some years? And it's the most taboo subject that exists. That is how disassociated we are with our bodies. And so you can just imagine how much rewiring and reconnection we have to do in order to come back in and allow ourselves to remember. And that is the doorway to our desires. Allowing ourselves to reconnect and walk the pathway of remembering and coming back into this body. The divine feminine in form, the divine feminine, when she works through us and she presents herself in our life and starts to activate within our body, because it's just an energy, it's just an essence. She asks us to listen, right? That's step number one. That's what we spoke about. Realizing, oh, wait, I have a menstrual cycle or I have a womb and it's talking to me. Hold on a second. What is it saying? Listen. Then we must see, okay, she's talking to me. She's telling me something. I have to see, I have to start picking up information. I have to look at my energy centers. I have to see, do I have the container that it takes for me to anchor in? Do I have the container that it takes for me to tap into true power that is required to manifest my desires? I have to start taking a look at my life. I have to start taking a look at my body. I have to start seeing with my true eyes, not with the eyes that I have been told, like, this is what it's supposed to look like, but my true authentic eyes. What am I seeing right now before me? And then lastly, where we are right now, allowing ourselves to feel. This is everything. Coming back to the power of feeling. And this opens up the conversation of menstruation. This opens up the conversation of our bleed. This opens up the conversation of the sexual force. These are the anchoring points that will allow us to tap into our deepest, most rooted, most divine desires. And we have to understand that it is both divine and human to work in this way, to be shown in this way. And menstruation is the most common sense, practical thing that can show us that. And I wish somebody would have told me that at the beginning of my journey, because the last example is me and my story. That through my spiritual awakening, I thought I was awakening. I thought I was knowing and learning something. I thought I knew something. And yet I was completely disconnected. I was swimming in the ethers of consciousness. I thought because something of the unseen had shown itself to me, I knew something. And yet I started to see this human life as dense. I started to feel completely disconnected, unsatisfied. I didn't honor the human journey. I didn't honor my human body. And that's when the divine feminine decided to pick me up and drop me off. I had the deepest initiation I could ever imagine. I had no idea what the womb signified. I had no idea what desires were outside of what we have been told desires are supposed to be, sexually, emotionally, physically, manifesting wise. And this is when the divine feminine started to show herself in layers to me. And it's not just about our bleed, it's about our womb, it's about menstruation, it's about cyclical living. All of these things start to activate the divine feminine within you. And these are the things that bring us into our deepest desires. It's hard to tap into these deepest desires as a woman if you are not living in this essence. And I'm not saying you have to live it fully. You don't have to be full force, in this cyclical living, menstrual cycle, womb wisdom kind of life. Of course not. But to come back into the feeling of it and to come back into its essence in some way, we'll start to activate it within you. And we'll start to activate it within your relationships and your creations and your life. And that, especially if you're here right now with me, you're listening to these words, that is the path to your deepest desires. And understanding that your womb is your source of power. And just like your womb is the source of your power, which is what's going to anchor and hold and hone into your deepest desires, Your menstruation is the door. So until you honor your bleed and have a relationship with it, it's going to be very hard to get real and honest about the deeper layers that lie within you that you don't even know exist, because the divine feminine is so vast. She is so mysterious and she is so divine. And the most practical doorway to her is your menstruation, is your bleed. And so, how is your relationship with your bleed? I'm just going to leave it at that. So, with the divine feminine, there is an essence that calls you, and you know it. You will feel it. It's birthed within you. You will feel it, just like you were called here with me today. There's a natural resonance that says, "Yep, yep, I know I'm ready. I know there's a desire within me that I don't even fathom. I don't have words for. I'm actually even scared." Because that's how I was. I was like, I'm fucking scared. And I didn't know. I didn't know the potential. All I knew was that I had had enough. I was fed up. And something else had to give. And my spiritual awakening did not have the answers. My connection to the ethers did not have the answers. And it wasn't until I was anchored into my womb that these things started to come together and make sense. So if you are drawn towards this path of living your desires and tapping into your deepest, deepest, truest essence and birth your desires into this world, I invite you to do what we've spoken about today, to tap into these things, to tap into your menstrual cycle, to tap into your bleed. So let's just recap for a moment so that you walk away with having some practical tips as to how am I going to start to live my desires. So let's get to the point. Well, I hope that you received already. I know it sounds a little mystical, but it's as practical as it can be with the divine feminine. So we've learned that menstrual cycle is a key to unlock your deepest desires. So first and foremost, come back to your body. What is your body telling you, not only when you're bleeding, but in every season of your cycle? And if you're like, what? I don't even know what that means. Send me your questions. I will give you all the resources that you need to tap into that, to start tapping into that. Then next, we talked about how anchoring into your womb is what will help you know and manifest your desires, right? Being able to create a strong container that will hold those lower three energetic centers that collapse as a womb space, getting clear and being able to see, do I have any leakage around these centers? Can I get curious about how these centers are being expressed and moved through me and out into my life? Get clear, so crystal clear about that, because that's the container that will hold your ability to reveal your desires to you and also hold your desires to be birthed into the world. And then lastly, we talked about your menstrual cycle, discovering your bleed as divine and understanding that as you recover that, it's going to open up this doorway of feeling into life. And the feeling into life is going to open up this vortex of feeling into new possibilities, feeling into new manifestations and creations, feeling into a new part of yourself that perhaps you don't even know exists. And crazy enough, it starts with your bleed. And I know you're like, how does that even make sense? I'm just sharing you my experience. This is my life experience. This is what I've lived. This is what I'm putting together to share with you. This is what I am intuitively guided to share, because it's my story. And I know that if it happened through me, chances are it's waiting to be revealed in somebody else through the same form, because the divine feminine works like hieroglyphics and symbology through the wisdom that she knows. And she knows how to speak through cycles. She knows how to speak through the body. She knows how to speak through emotions and sensations. And damn sure she knows how to speak through blood, death, and rebirth. So connect with your cycle, connect with your lower energy centers, connect with your bleed. Your ability to create the life you want and the desires that you don't even know you yet have are reliant on your ability to anchor into your womb. Anchoring into your womb is what will help you know and live your desires. And you are allowed, my love, my friend, my sweet sister, you are allowed to have it all and to be satisfied and to have your desires not only be met, but be revealed to you in the ways that you do not yet know. And your desires are yours for a reason. They lie within the wisdom of your body, blood, and bones for you and only you. They don't need an explanation. They don't need a reason. They just need to be felt and lived through you. And now is your time. Because you're here with me right now, there's something within you. The divine feminine is calling you to take responsibility. She's calling you to take on the desires that have been given to you, or perhaps that you know is nudging you to reveal in deeper layers and levels. Now is the time for you to take extreme responsibility. And that's one thing that the divine feminine will teach us, taking extreme responsibility for our desires that are given to each one of us. No two people on this earth have the same desire. We can come together with others to co-create, and our desires will perhaps be created together and be reflected back at us in different ways. But it's the time now to create and live and tap into and reveal these desires for you. And this process of remembering does not happen in a logical way. Reclaiming the wisdom of your womb is not masculine, it's not mental, it's not programming your mind to manifest anything. It's about swimming in the ocean of consciousness and allowing the waters of your soul to fill you fully. And as we drip and we drink one drop of water and wisdom at a time, we remember more and more and more. You can't study your way there. No one's going to give you a book. This is not a manifestation presentation. This is about you reclaiming the wisdom and the knowledge and the codes and the ability to be the creatrix of the life you are meant to be and live and birth in this world. And it's written inside of you. That's the whole process of the divine feminine. She takes you inside. You have to descend in order to ascend. And that's the process of living your deepest desires. And in that process, you will have to alchemize old wounds and programs. That's the work of the dark feminine, of the deep void of the dark mother, of the mother consciousness, to hold the space for you to not be scared, but actually honor, embrace, and love your wounds because you chose them at this lifetime. And decide that it is now time to stop holding yourself back from fully expressing your gifts and talents, because what happens is the following. When your creatrix codes are lit up, my love, my sister, my friend, when your creatrix codes are lit up, the creations come and you are sustained. And not only are you sustained, you are satisfied through that. And again, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not promising you anything, but I am telling you that reconnection back to your root essence and your pleasure principle and your desire principle, once that connection is rebuilt and remembered, it's like planting the seed that has been waiting to be planted in the soil. The tree is inevitable that will grow and the fruits will inevitably show. And of course, there will be seasons, but the seed will bring in the roots that are needed to sustain you through the entire process. And that's the intelligence and the wisdom of the divine feminine. And this is where I get to share with you the Woman Wisdom Mentorship. Right? This is where this work leads us to. And this is just a few more minutes that we have together. So the Woman Wisdom Mentorship is a 3-month journey and exploration into this and so much more. It's going deep into the process of descending into ascension. It's going deep into the process of activating your creatrix codes. It's going deep into the process of getting real in order to first remember and then activate, see, and then feel these things come alive within you. And so I'm going to give you a website where you can read and take your time with it, but these are the modules. It's 8 weeks of content, and yet we will distribute that amongst 3 months so you don't feel bombarded or overwhelmed. We get familiar with our deep feminine wound. Every single human being on this planet has a deep feminine wound. So you will be able to access this deep feminine wound for yourself, for your beloved, for your family members, for anybody around you. And once we shed light upon our own darkness, we are given the ability to anchor in. Because here's the thing, that concept that I said about anchoring into your womb and finding the leakage, if you cannot see your own wound, how do you even know you have leakage? You don't know it's there. So then being able to bring light and energy and focus into these places of our bodies that we have not, once it's clear, then we start to reclaim our power and remember. So that's one of the first things we do in this mentorship, is that we tap into and we get clear about what is our deep feminine wound. And then we talk about so much more. I'm not going to walk through all of these because you can read them yourself, but activating the womb heart, talking about womb wisdom, expressing your womb, having womb wellness, loving your period, reclaiming that relationship to your period. I gave you some superfood recipes because I just can't help myself. Understanding fertility, of course, talking about as well abortion and miscarriages, and actually being able to complete the cycle of abortion and miscarriage, which for most women, they don't realize that that process needs to be closed. So anytime that we have that and it's not, that inherently creates energy leakage, without a doubt. If you have not consciously closed your abortions or miscarriages, there is energetic leakage there, and that needs to be taken care of and honored. We talk about, of course, healing the womb, lineages, the real meaning of cord cutting, which I know in the spiritual communities is very common, but true cord cutting is a little different. Sexual energy, of course, the true sexual energy, the energetics of pleasure, we really get into understanding the sexual force. And that leads us into understanding conscious relating and magnetizing your true partner. What is sacred sexuality? The power of divine union within yourself and also within other. And then we finish off with the new codes of the feminine and the rose teachings. So this was all channeled through me. The divine feminine came to me upon moving to Hawaii, upon taking that huge nudge that I had in my gut to follow her desires within me. I knew I had to come to Hawaii. I just didn't know why or how that made sense. I had no family here. We knew nobody. Well, that's a lie. We knew two people. We literally knew 2 people. 3, I'm sorry. That's not the point. The point is diving into the depths of the unknown. You just don't know what's on the other side. And that's what birthed this channeling, this mentorship. So I ask you and invite you to join me in activating your creatrix codes, to receive the feminine teachings, to create a deeper connection to your body's wisdom and your womb, to move and create through the world from a new place. and to explore so much more that I just don't have words right now, and I don't want to keep you any longer. So if this resonates, if you feel the nudge, if you feel that pull to dive into the ocean, if you feel like me that I had to move and I had to say yes to something so big that I could not even fathom and I had no logical explanation for it, then I invite you to join me, to join the special group. I do this, so far it's been once a year. Um, And a big part of this process that I have included is embodiment practices. So for me, like I mentioned before, embodiment is a huge part of this process. It's something that was missing in my life and lacking, and it was the missing puzzle piece for me for a very, very long time. And it wasn't until I started embodiment practices and understanding what that even meant, um, that I was able to start to anchor in to my body and ground all of this esoteric stuff. And I'm not saying that's your process. What I'm saying is that embodiment and honoring our body and this realm and this human experience is inevitable if we want to tap into our deepest desires. It is inevitable. You cannot deny the humanness of this life. And so, also with that, the mentorship includes bi-weekly Zoom group calls. So, yes, there are 8 modules, but it's spread out through 3 months so that you don't feel overwhelmed. And I also have a little surprise for you, so that you will receive a lot of information, and I want you to take your time with it, and you have access to it for much longer. So we will either have weekly calls or bi-weekly calls, just depending on the content of each module and how everybody holds on to the information. And then, and so just to be very clear, there's pre-recorded content of the wisdom that is channeled, and then there is live Zoom calls. So this does require for you to show up, but just know that you have access to it for a long time. So you, even if you are unable to keep up with the live calls, everything's recorded and given to you. And then you have a private 45-minute session with me so that we get to know each other, because for me it's really important to create that heart-to-heart connection, to get to know you as a woman, to get to know you in your essence, and to get to know what brought you here, what is your intention, and what are we doing at a deeper level and at a higher level. What are we descending to ascend? And so, as a special gift from me to you for staying here with me, to opening yourself up to this work, if you are called to join the mentorship, I am including the Activate Womb Wisdom course. That is 4 weeks to guide you through natural birth control and creating a womb wellness routine for yourself. My favorite course by far, because it's practical, it empowers you. Understand that natural birth control is a huge passion of mine. It is something that I want to share with the world. It is the reason why I created this planner, which I am actually also gifting with this mentorship. And this planner you will be able to use with this course. And it's not just about natural birth control, it is so much more. It is understanding the truth behind your fertility, that we are not just here to be mothers. For those of us who choose not to have children, we have a responsibility to birth something new, and we have a responsibility to have an understanding of our womb. So that's what that course is about. Activate Womb Wisdom gives you the tools that you need to prevent pregnancies, to understand your womb, to understand your cycle. It is fertility awareness method in the way that I practice it, and also a lot of tools and recipes and techniques and things that I have learned and been passed down with to share with you. And like I said earlier, I will be gifting a planner, the Cyclical Living Planner, to every woman who joins me in this process. So if you feel the nudge, if you feel the call, I invite you into the sacred vortex of the divine feminine to not only tap into your divine desires and to activating everything we spoke about, but to join me and your highest self in this journey of descending in order to ascend with the divine feminine. This is the link that you can use, celesteglus.com/woman wisdom. And of course, I will be providing that link for you as well. So you can read all of the details there. There's a lot of podcast episodes that you can dive into and get really familiar with the frequency of the work. If there's anything that's more important, is that if you're called towards this work, you connect with the frequency that is being emitted. Not so much with the words that are being used or the language, but the frequency that is being emitted. And so I invite you to explore and to get familiar, because the resonance will be felt, and that's how you will know. And lastly, of course, please, 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 please reach out to me. Send me your questions. I am more than happy to create conversations around that. I love creating conversations around your questions, because chances are your questions are my questions, and your questions are so many other people's questions. So I want to personally say thank you for being here. Thank you for spending all this time with me. And I honor you. I honor your process. And I hope that you have received something that resonates and something that guides you in this journey and in this process with the divine feminine within. Sending you so much love.